All right, Crim 1, let's jump into Chapter 3, The Causes of Crime. I'll be honest, this chapter is slightly boring, but oh, good Lord. Of course, my cell phone is on. Let's turn my ringer off. How's that? All right, so kind of boring, but really important. It is important to at least have a good foundation about what actually does cause crime and the theories of crime. So what we're going to talk about in this chapter are the different theories of crime. You'll note that some of these theories seem to fit certain types of criminal behavior or criminals, and certain theories might fit more closely with other types of criminal behavior. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think we all know that there are many causes to crime. And again, this is an overview. So, having said that, the early schools of thought, there were researchers who studied crime and criminal behavior many years ago. The Classical School of Criminology, they are of the belief, oh good God, now there's a siren and everything outside. Gotta be kidding me. It's not my day. Okay, Classical School of Criminology believes that crime is a product of free will and that we choose to commit crime. So this whole concept really comes down to the whole idea that each one of us, has choices on a daily basis, and we rationally make choices every day. Some of us consider whether or not to commit crime, and we decide to go ahead and do so. It is free will. It is our own minds making these decisions. That's the whole concept of the Classical School of Criminology. This neoclassical that you'll see here recognize that some cannot reason. Some people simply don't have the capacity to reason or have rational thought. So these neoclassicals believed that should be considered when the criminal justice system was figuring out how to handle these offenders. And usually we're talking about mentally ill or children. But back to the classical school, that rational choice theory. We, as human beings, consider the pleasure that we might receive after whatever the crime is that we commit. Let's say we decide to steal $1,000. How awesome would it be to have that extra $1,000 in your pocket? It would be great. Pleasure would be pretty high. How much pain would one suffer if they got caught? So weighing the pleasure-pain principle is another concept within the Classical School of Criminology, meaning we think rationally about whether or not we should commit that crime. And how much would I love the money? I would love it a lot. How much would it hurt for me to go to jail, or to embarrass my family, or to lose my job, or whatever the consequence could be if I got caught for that criminal behavior? So again, another early school of thought would be the positivist school of criminology. Now, the positivist school believed that offenders basically were born criminals. There was something physically, biologically wrong with them that made them commit crimes. So no matter how good or bad their life was, they were born criminals, and there was nothing that could be done to save them. Again, part of that positivist school of criminology includes the concept of atavism. And this is kind of, I don't know, it's an interesting one. But these people believed that criminals physically had different physical characteristics than non-criminals. They believed that they were throwbacks from an earlier time and more caveman type people. I know, but that's what it is. Okay, so next, biological factors. Neurobiological factors of brain function. If you have a brain injury, think CTE for football players. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of football players who, after many years and many concussions, have ended up becoming criminals potentially because of that brain injury. ADHD, is that a reason a person could commit crime? It could. Chemical imbalance, absolutely, and hormonal imbalance. So these are all biological factors that could be linked to criminal behavior. Then we have genetic factors. Genetic studies would tend to show that criminal behavior can run in families. Now, does that mean just because you have your mom or dad as a criminal that you're going to be a criminal? Of course not. But it does mean you might be more likely to become a criminal if your mom, dad, whoever that you are biologically related to is also a criminal. There have been studies that there's a gene mutation linked to violent behavior. So again, genetic factor. And there have been studies of identical twins, where identical twins were separated at birth and placed with two different families, lived two completely different lifestyles. If one was a criminal, the other was more likely to also be a criminal than someone who did not have a criminal sibling. So I hope that makes sense. All right. Psychological factors. Obviously, this is a big one. There are many mental disorders which could contribute to criminal behavior. Psychoses, serious mental disorders that cause individuals to be out of touch with reality and thus unable to cope with the demands of everyday living. Makes sense. If a person is suffering from psychoses, that they might end up committing some criminal acts. The DSM-4, again, some of you are going to be psych majors. I am not a psychologist. I am not a psych major. But the DSM-4, as I understand it, is basically the book that psychiatrists and psychologists use to diagnose certain mental health conditions. Schizophrenia is another one that is really a very, very sad, heartbreaking disease where people basically lose touch with reality, become very paranoid. And their cognitive functioning is impaired, and sometimes schizophrenics will lash out and commit criminal behavior because of their loss of attachment to reality. Really sad. Can be treated with medication. A lot of times schizophrenics don't like to take their medication because it makes them feel different. That's kind of the goal, to be honest. But anyway, so schizophrenia is another one. Bipolar disorder, absolutely another one where we have you have intense high and low mood swings. These can also, again, bipolar disorder can also lead to criminal behavior. Postpartum depression. A lot of people suffer from postpartum depression. A lot of women, I should say, suffer from postpartum depression. Some, it's much more severe than others. And there have been, numerous instances where a mother, having recently given birth, has ended up killing her child allegedly because of postpartum depression. Now, I certainly believe that this is something that could lead to criminal behavior. Psychopathy, a personality disorder involving specific cognitive and emotional deficits that is exhibited by a lifelong pattern of antisocial behavior. You all know people like this, people with no remorse, no feelings, no care. They don't care about anyone else. Probably sociopath is a word that I would use here. But they're worried about their own needs and not others' needs. And sometimes that can lead to criminal behavior. And then we have PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. This one is probably, it's pretty common, certainly in former military. The things that our servicemen and women see while they are away fighting for our country can be horrifying, and trying to come back to home to their families and not be permanently scarred by the trauma that they suffered is a challenge. And can that lead to criminal behavior? It can. So then we have some social or sociological, but social factors that might cause crime. Let's say start with the strain factor, strain theories. Sorry. Strain theory, imagine someone who you are the kid in high school who can't afford the Jordans or the Yeezys, and you're super frustrated because you know that you can't legitimately afford to go out and buy those shoes, we'll say. Because of that frustration, you decide that the only way that you can keep up with society and with the rest of the people that you associate with is to participate in criminal behavior. I'm going to skip that life course one. Well, actually, there are certain offenders who are only criminals during their adolescence, and there are others who continue and their criminal behavior persists throughout their life. Social bonds. All of us probably have people in our lives that care about us and that we care about. People that we would be devastated if we broke their hearts by becoming criminals. Think parents, grandparents, caregivers, loved ones, spouses, things like that, children. There are many reasons why I would not commit crime, but I can guarantee you that at the top of my list would be for fear of embarrassing my mother, my children, my community, all that kind of stuff. So those bonds to society hold me or keep me in check. They hold me like an anchor in check so that I don't choose to commit criminal behavior. And this is, something that's, if you do not have those bonds, it's much easier to slip into criminal behavior because nobody's watching. Nobody, in your mind at least, no one cares. So, and then you have the neutralization theory. And a lot of people with these without social bonds can rationalize just about any kind of criminal behavior. I stole a cell phone from a teacher, but if she was dumb enough to leave it out, it was her fault. Okay, that's rationalizing. She has insurance, so they're going to pay for it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Again, rationalizing. She has a good job, she can afford another one, and I can't. Rationalizing the behavior. So that's those. Some more inequity in crime. Social conflict is very similar to the strain theory. People who are poor and or disadvantaged get frustrated, angry, and sometimes lash out into criminal behavior in order to even the playing field. The next one, cultural deviance theory. Negative and antisocial values are learned in neighborhoods and subcultures, and sometimes those produce criminal behavior. So let's say somebody decided to vandalize one house in the neighborhood, and then other people notice, wow, that house is being vandalized, and nobody cares. So I'm going to go over there and vandalize it too. I don't know. Does that make sense? I hope so. Concentric circles by Shaw and McKay. So this whole concept of concentric circles is basically that in the center of every city, you would draw like a little circle. And then you would draw circles outward from that center up until you reached the end of the city. Crime rates were higher in the center of the city than in the outskirts of the cities. And this fits absolutely with the city of Fresno. If you think about downtown Fresno versus, the Bryant Road, where's more crime going to take place, in the center of the city or out in the outskirts? And it's almost always going to be in the center of the city for a lot of reasons. It's cheaper to live there. Those areas, those neighborhoods are more unstable because people move in and out of them a lot. There's a lot of poverty in those areas, and a lack of stability. So that was the concept of concentric circles. Acting out from social process factors, labeling theory. So let's say I'm going to name my student for this class. It's going to be Chloe. So my student's name is Chloe, and I just met Chloe today. And as I'm looking at Chloe and looking at her last name, I realize, I think I might know her older sister. Hey, Chloe, do you have a sister named Zoe? And Chloe says, yeah, Zoe's my older sister. And I think to myself, as her instructor, wow, Zoe was the worst student I had. I hated her. She was disrespectful. She was a horrible student, and I really couldn't stand her. And now I got Chloe, the younger sister. I know this is just going to be more of the same. And from day one, I've already labeled Chloe as a troublemaker because her sister Zoe was, and I treat her differently. My attitude toward her is going to be a little different than from my other students. Chloe feels this. She gets that I treat her differently. And she's frustrated by it and thinks to herself, well, if she wants to see a jerk just like my sister Zoe, I'll show her that. And her behavior changes based on my perception and my label of her. Labeling theory. Okay. And then we have victimization factors. Victimology is the study of victims. This includes their behaviors, injuries, assistance, legal rights, and recovery. I know you can read that, so sorry. There are certain things, there are certain people that are more likely to be victimized than others. I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but the most likely race, gender, age to be victimized in the United States are young Black men. A lot of us would probably think, oh, it must be women because women get raped all the time and and don't get me wrong, women do get raped, but they are not victimized nearly as much as young Black men. Also, I have noticed personally throughout my career that a lot of the young people that I dealt with had been victims over and over again. I would interview them and ask them, have you ever been the victim of sexual assault? And the list would start then. They'd be like, well, the first time I was molested, I was 5. And then when I was 8, I got molested by another relative. And then when I was 12, I got molested by a pastor. And it's really insane how likely people are to be victimized, or recidivist victims, or victimized over and over again. So does behavior during the crime have any impact on someone's level of victimization? Sure. Is the victim going to fight back? Are they going to submit? How is the whole process going to go? If someone gets into a car with a stranger quietly and lets them drive them 100 miles away and murder them, there's going to be a different outcome than if someone there might be a different outcome than if someone starts screaming and yelling and doing everything they can to get other people's attention before they even get in that car. So sometimes victims are innocent, and sometimes victims can have some involvement that leads them to their victimization. I hope that makes sense. So I think that's it. All right. End of chapter